Well, today we're going to be thinking about, you guessed it, education and the church and all of that. And actually, I'm kind of wrapping up this, call it, I don't know, mini-series, because I'm going to be thinking about AI in the next series. And so I'm just wanting to put a nice bow on this one. And so here today with me, I have Eric and I have Zach, and I'll do more intro later, but we're going to kind of roundtable discussion this. It's going to be fun. So thanks for joining us.
You're listening to the Richard Eng Podcast. Biblical clarity for a confused age. If this podcast helps you think more clearly, live more faithfully, and follow Jesus with greater confidence, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. It helps more people find the show. To get more resources, articles, and updates from Richard, join his email list at richardreng.com. You can also find his weekly sermons at bethelfree.com.
All right, so we're here. We're wrapping up this conversation. Eric, you said that you were listening to my most recent episode on your way here, so you're ready. Right?
I am ready. I've been freshly primed.
Yeah, you're ready to rock. So I've got Eric Herman. I've got Zach Davis. Zach, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Zach Davis. I am the next gen pastor at Bethel Church in Devil's Lake. I work alongside Richard, and then I serve in ministry with Eric as well. So.
Yeah, we all hang out.
Yeah.
Eric, what about you?
Well, I just got drug into this group last minute, so it worked out pretty good. I'm a longtime youth helper leader here at Bethel. I'm a dentist on a side job, and I do a little bit of everything in between.
Nice. It's good. Yep. And you were the interim not a pastor.
I was the interim not a pastor. Yes.
Right, before Zach got here.
Just
and
for
so
one year, yeah.
Right.
I was the interim not a pastor.
So my first year here, I remember that it was you in that youth role, and it was your wife in the worship role. And so it was like right away, I'm getting to know the Herman family, right? And
absolutely,
you guys were just jumping right in. Logan's on staff now. You're still, you did a lot of youth ministry and all that, so it's good. But today we're talking about education in the church. So here's a phrase that I keep coming back to. I keep coming back to the idea that the local church needs to be a hub of education. And I feel like we've moved away from that in favor of maybe more easily accessible content, more easily digestible. So I'll give you an example. My algorithm for my social media is hilariously unique to me. Like, I'm sure it is for you guys too, right? It's bad. And it listens to my conversations. It's insane. It has to. But I saw a video, and this guy was talking about just how to communicate, how to preach, tips on that stuff. And he was saying you can either be deep or you can be memorable. And he posed it as this, it has to be one or the other. Like, you can either go deep or people will remember what you said, and you have to pick. And so, of course, he was saying, make sure that you pick the memorable one so people actually remember what you said, and then they go live it, and then they go be more faithful, blah, blah, blah. That was his whole point of the video. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, wait, time out. This is not an either or, and yet it is set up as an either or, right? So I don't know. When I say hub of education, where does your guys' mind go? What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, when I think hub of education, I guess, you kind of had a podcast on Sunday school and that kind of thing. I think you start kind of with the basics there with Sunday school, and then your education throughout. And, you said something about being memorable or being deep, and I think you can be both. I don't think it's either or, but I think it starts with Sunday school, and then it goes from there because you're growing into adult ministry and things from there. So I just think it's all of those things, and it's the church being efficient and good at all of those things. But
I think as a participant, it's a lot easier to be in that memorable Sunday school class or that memorable podcast, listening to it. It takes a lot of personal activity and learning to be in the deep area of a class. You know, you can go to Sunday school class and you can just take the memorable stuff, but to actually take it deep, that takes personal work on your part.
There's some work, yeah. Yep. And the deep, I think it depends on what you mean by deep. Yeah. Do you mean like too in the weeds on some theological thing? Like maybe I'm with you there. Like there's a place for, like I always think about when I preach, for example, the stuff that doesn't make it to the pulpit is usually the interesting stuff, but it doesn't necessarily support the main point that I'm making, or I just don't have time to get into it, right? There might just be stuff like that, and it's just, you know, it's on the cutting room floor. But I always, I don't know, I feel like when I preach especially, I like to, maybe you guys have noticed this, I like to actually cite my source, so people can then, if they're curious, can go, oh, that's a name that I can start to recognize and go look into.
That way they can take something deeper, and that's where the work comes in.
Right.
I like that you brought up the difference between the stuff that's off in the weeds and interesting but weird, or the stuff that's personally applicable.
Right. Or not, not helpful.
Or where you want to dig in more personally.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about sermon, I think about when I'm sermon prepping and, you know, the things that don't get brought into that sermon. But when I am preparing, I like to sprinkle the deep stuff in there, but you're not constantly deep. You have to be able to make the deep stuff easy to understand, and I think you do a good job of that too, but sprinkling that throughout too, so that they're growing deep and wide in what they're doing.
Right, right. I feel like I actually remember being at a church in Nebraska, and there was a guy who was preaching, and it was like, you know, when you're at a youth retreat and you just stop by a church on your way home, like it was one of those deals, right? Yeah. We stopped by a church in Omaha, and I remember the guy it was like he wanted to make this deep cultural insight point. And he was talking about Carl Truman and all the insights about the psychological man and like all this stuff. And he was like right there. And then he said, but if you want to listen to or if you want to learn more, you can just go read the book. And he moved on. And I actually remember thinking to myself, what he was about to talk about actually supported what he was saying, but he didn't go there because I know that church specifically doesn't want to go super deep because they don't want to scare people away. Like I know that about that church, right? And that's a choice that they make. Whereas I like what Doug Groteis said, and I can't remember if he said this like in writing or if he said this when he was at our Bible conference last year. But he said something like, I don't want to like assume that people are stupid and not allow them to reach for something too, you know? And so he actually, and so it's got me thinking, he intentionally speaks just above people's heads so that people can go grab it, right?
Absolutely. I got to sit with Doug Groteis and a couple other really smart people that weekend and just listen to them talk. And I felt like the dumbest one in the room by so far, but it was one of the best things because I realized there was a whole nother rung on the ladder to grab.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
And I sat and just listened with this probably a blank look on my face, like, what in the world are you guys talking about? But they were so knowledgeable in so many ways that I had never studied or learned before. And so that gave me the insight into a whole nother world that, which maybe that's what you're talking about, going deep. You know,
right.
They went there. They were deep. They weren't on some obscure side lane. They were deep in the meat of Scripture and the meat of Christian writers and authors.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I like that picture. There's another rung, you know?
Right.
Because how many Christians get up like 2 steps on the ladder and they're like, I'm good. Like I'm higher than that guy, you know? But I think that's part of the process of discipleship. And you mentioned Sunday school, Zach, just helping people from a young age get to the next rung.
Right.
And doing that systematically.
Yeah. When I think of Sunday school as a whole, something that's been on my mind a lot lately is There's a new statistic out there that's showing that kids are deciding what they believe by age 9. So we're getting them in this Sunday school stuff, and yeah, it's cool to learn about Noah's flood, and it's cool to learn about all those things, but is that actually keeping them there just by telling them, hey, go be a good person, and that be the whole lesson? Or can we actually dig deeper and get these kids where we want them to be so they don't leave the faith, so they decide to stay in there by age 10 and go so on and so forth from there. But yeah.
Well, and your Sunday school strategy, going back to, that was my first episode. I mean, it's either going to be intentional or it's just going to be, well, we have a program.
Yeah.
We did a lesson and it included a story, right? And that's not bad, but it's also not optimized to what it could be. It's not holistic.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're not thinking about intended outcomes, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that the local church, if it's going to be a hub of education, the word that I come back to is ownership. Like, you have to be the one to think through your unique problems and what curriculum is going to fix those problems. And a lot of the problems are the same, church to church, honestly. But you might have some unique cultural thing that you need to deal with. Maybe you have a certain kind of church background that a lot of your people fall into. And so you're either teaching to that, or you're trying to help them get out of something that's not quite right. You know, maybe you're in Utah and you're trying to help LDS people, former LDS. And so they're like untangling their theology from Mormonism, to give an easy example. But I do feel like, though, that people, and even I would say, I would guess most people who are listening to this podcast right now are like, yeah, we should be grabbing the next rung. We should be going deeper. We should be, thinking, but it's the people who are like, why do I need that? They're not listening to this podcast, So the need doesn't even know. They don't even, it's not met. Right. They're not aware of it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to education in the church too, a little bit too. How do we get those people wanting to go at the next level and take that step deeper? I feel like that's everywhere. That's not just specific to our local church. That's every single church. How do you get people to take that next step and go deeper?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was actually going to frame a question similar to that. You said, kids are deciding what they believe by about the age of 9. I was thinking, how do you take, tell them the Bible story of Noah or whatever, and then they're going to decide what they believe by age 9. How do we show them that those stories aren't fictional, fairy tales? How do we bring them into reality? Something that I'm learning just recently is how to frame that into all the history that I learned in school.
Yeah.
And I'm going, all that stuff I learned about the Romans, about the whoever, whatever the culture is, that lines up with this biblical story, and that means that we've got all these archaeological finds and this stuff, but for a 9-year-old, are you going to teach them archaeology?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's what you have to do. I mean, just today, this is kind of sidetracking a little bit.
I know what you were going to say, because I was going to say it.
We were talking about the Odyssey movie and where it lines up with the biblical narrative, and me and Richard were kind of nerding out on, well, where did it go from here? And I think, where did we figure out it was?
It was like right at the beginning of the exile.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was
when the Odyssey was written.
Yes, when it was written.
Yep.
It was right around then. So we're able to piece that back together by the biblical timeline that we have, but just kind of nerding out on that. But to go back to your question, maybe you do. I think it goes back to worldview stuff. You said reality, but you weren't talking about the conference that we go to, but that's kind of framed a lot on worldview and apologetics.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it starts with a healthy worldview, and you can start that from age 3, where we start our Sunday school stuff, all the way up, and you just little nuggets here and there, and they know what they believe because that's being taught to them from age 3 all the way to 9, and then continually. So
yeah. Okay, so if you're listening and maybe you've heard worldview and maybe you don't know what that means, or maybe you've heard it a million times and you're still fuzzy. A worldview is, let's say, your core convictions, whether you are aware of them or not, that shape the way that you interpret and see reality. So you can think of it like a pair of glasses. You know, I think about a worldview like, you guys know those 3D glasses, right? Everybody has a pair of 3D glasses and they're different colors. So that's why you can have two people who look at the same set of data and look at and get two different conclusions out of it, because their priors and their assumptions and their their convictions that they bring into the data before they even read the data, that's coloring the way that they're seeing it, right? So I saw an article that's making the rounds today. At the time of this recording, it was 50% of Gen Z say they don't go to church because of evangelical support for Trump. Wow. That's why. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is it because of Trump, or is it because they already have a worldview that would lead them away from the church, and Trump is like the weed, but it's not the root?
Yeah.
I would say it's the weed. Mm-hmm. Because let's say that there was a different Republican president, or let's say that there was a Democratic president. Like, I actually think you could come up with a very similar statistic, and it would read like 70% of evangelicals don't attend pride parades because of Biden.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. It has nothing to do with Biden. Yeah. This is not a Trump. This is not a president thing. This is, people have a worldview, right? So they're going to be interpreting the world around them. Right. They're going to be interpreting, and that also colors the way that they make choices and what they value and what they pursue, right? So a worldview is all encompassing. So how do you form worldview from an early age?
Right.
Yeah, it's those foundational things.
Yeah, I think you have to figure out, you start with who is God and you go from there. But I'm always reminded of your daughter, Richard, Ella. She's started using a curriculum and going through that in school, and she's how old?
She'll be 8 in a few days.
Yeah, so right around that time that we want to really capture these kids. But just you talking about these people that are worshiping all these other gods and all these different gods while you're preaching, and then she's able to identify that because of what's being taught at home. Yeah, I always think of that. That's worldview stuff right there. That's being taught at home.
Yeah,
which that goes to another thing where the home is the primary place to be discipled. But yeah, just that's worldview stuff that has been brought to her from a young age and built in where now she can defend that.
So to tell the whole story, I forgot about that, Zach. Thank you for reminding me. So I was preaching, I can't remember what I was preaching on, but I mentioned some like false god from the time of the Israelites. Right. And Ella leans over to my wife during the sermon and said, "Is that pantheism?" And of course, my apologetics theology heart is just singing at that comment, like, yes, it is, Ella. That's awesome. But yes, it is, because kids are more capable than you think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're talking about the church being this hub of education, and you brought up a really good point, Zach. You said that that the home is really the primary place for teaching and discipleship. So if the church is a hub of education, we've talked a lot about developing kids' knowledge of the Bible and Bible stories by age 9, so that they would solidify what they believe. How do we address, and Richard's talked about this in his podcast leading up to this, but how we address the home being the primary place of discipleship? Like, that just puts the importance so heavily on parents knowing the Bible, parents knowing Scripture, knowing their theology and who God is, who Jesus is.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Right. And I think too, when we say that they're the primary disciple, we should be the hub too. So that means we're not a drop-off service for kids, because that should be happening at home too. But we also can't say, well,
the home being a drop-off service. Yeah. I got to give you a hard time.
discipleship.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyways, but we should also be, the church shouldn't just rely on parents and say, well, they're the main disciple makers.
Yes.
Let's just take a step back and do our little lesson on how to be a good person. We need to provide parents with training, and we also need to provide the students with something that's valuable as well. So it comes from both sides. We should be partnering and not just say, this is your job, good luck to either side of that. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think strong families produces strong churches. And when you're trying to do something in the church that you're not doing at home, it's not going to last very long.
Right.
It's going to be on a weak foundation. It's not going to. So, it's why Paul says in the pastoral epistles that elders and deacons have to be good managers of their home. It's because Paul knows that there's a sense that if you aren't, you can't, if you can't manage your family, how can you shepherd God's flock, right? So if you can't educate your kids at home, how could you educate somebody else's kids in the church? And maybe that's on some level, that's not always the hard rule of thumb. If you don't have kids, if you've got, whatever, like, there's that's not, if you've never raised kids, you can't be a teacher. But I do think that there's a continuity, integrity thing. And when you have both,
Right.
when you have the strong home lives, it's in the habits, we're praying together, we're talking together about this stuff. I think, and when we're interacting with ideas in the culture and we're not afraid, like we're going to talk about this and not, there was I forget who said this. The first person who introduces a topic to a child is considered an expert on that topic to that child. Yep. So if the kid on the playground introduces pornography, that kid is the expert, right? He's the one who introduced me. If you hear, especially sex, right? So that's why when parents tell me or ask me, when should I talk to my kids about this stuff? I always answer sooner than you want to, because if it's better than too late.
Right.
And there's great resources to start that conversation. But yeah, I just think parents on some level, you got to start, you got to go. So
what does that practically look like, that partnership between the church being the hub and then the parent being the main? What are some practical things that could actually look like?
Well, before we answer that question, why don't we do trivia for today? You weren't ready for that, were you?
No.
Okay, so we're talking about education. We're talking about, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so here's the trivia question. And I've never done a trivia question on this podcast with live guests in the room. Oh. And so you guys can, you're not going to guess yet. You're going to have to guess at the end of the episode.
Do we need to write down our answer?
Yeah.
So.
Ooh, that's actually, maybe jot your answer down on I've got this sticky note. Both of you guys can write your answer, and then here, I'll give you a pen. Okay, so do I have two pens?
If I beat the pastor, do I get 1,000,000 points?
1,000 points, actually.
Points don't matter.
where the points are made up, and yeah, exactly. Rules are made up, and points don't matter. All right, but I will say, several people have commented to me about this section, and they're like, I've gotten every single question right. And it's a big deal. And so if you're listening and you're that person, this one, I actually am thinking I got to stump a certain couple people who've told that to me. Okay, so here's the question. Awana began through the children's ministry of what Chicago church? Okay, so I'm gonna give you a multiple choice. All right.
Oh, good.
I'm not gonna just make you guess. Okay, is it A, Moody Church, B, Chicago Gospel Tabernacle, C, Willow Creek Community Church, or D, Pacific Garden Mission? Okay, so is it Moody? Is it Chicago Gospel Tabernacle? Is it Willow Creek? Or is it Pacific Garden Mission ABCD. Awana began through the children's ministry of what Chicago church? You guys, if you can't see this if you're listening to the podcast, but they're both jotting their answers. Okay, do you want to ask?
My answer is locked in.
Your answer's locked in, so you don't want to ask any clarifying questions.
I think I need Jeopardy music right now.
Well, the only thing I have is that. That's all I got.
Did the idea just come to you?
Yeah. Whoa.
I actually tried to find good game show music that was the royalty free or whatever, and I wouldn't get in trouble with copyright. I couldn't find anything. It was all terrible. So yeah. But before we answer the question, what does that look like practically? We've talked about the Bible conference, and so here's more about it. So here's why we're doing this. On September 25th through the 27th at Bethel Church here in Devil's Lake, we're hosting the second annual North Dakota Bible Conference. And the purpose is to help Christians think more clearly, live faithfully, and stand firm in a culture that is constantly pulling us away from the truths of Scripture. And so here's the thing, is that this conference is not just for pastors. It's not for theologians, not just for apologetics nerds. It's for the whole family. So we actually are going to have a kids program, and so teenagers can come, your whole family can be there and sign up. And so this is for people, if you are asking hard questions, if you're a believer who wants to go deeper, get up to that next rung, or maybe you're a young Christian and you want to just be introduced into this world of here's all this stuff that's out there. The theme this year has everything to do with identity, and it's called Designed. And we're going to talk about creation, fall, and redemption of how God works through all of those areas of the biblical worldview when it relates to our identity, and specifically how our identity in Christ kind of fixes that problem of identity. Lou Marcos is going to do a great job in the last session. So get signed up. You can go to bethelfree.com/NDBC and you can register. The registration link is live, and actually it's cheaper right now. So if you like getting a deal, now's the time. Okay, so we're gonna go back to your question, Zach. How do you do that practically?
You go to the Bible conference.
You go to the Bible conference. That's the first thing. Let me ask you that question. You're the one that asked it. Are you going to do the I'm just asking questions?
Yeah, I
thing?
raised my hand. Yeah.
No, you got to say something.
No, I think it goes to parent training, having those kinds of classes for parents and really partnering with them. That might look like once a month getting together and just talking over these issues that they're going on in their home, or maybe it's having an active pamphlet type ministry in your foyer where, oh, I have a kid that's 0 to 2, let me go pick that up, or just something like that. I think practically is a first good step to kind of have, and then you can branch off from there.
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
Yeah, parent training, I think that's key. I think that parents only want training when they're in crisis mode.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the trouble with parent, because there's a million resources, right?
Yeah.
But it's not until there's a need. So actually part of it is helping parents to see it is worth your time to get equipped on these things before it's a problem.
Right.
And maybe it never is a problem for your kids, but you could help somebody else. Mm-hmm. So to have that vision of, yes, I'm raising my own children, but I'm also a part of the body of Christ and can participate with other people. Looks like you have some thoughts, Eric.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm a dentist, so I tend to relate things to dentistry. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody come in, they have 9 cavities, all right between your teeth. And right between your teeth, what cleans there? Flossing. That's the worst thing in the world. The worst invention ever made, but it is the best thing for cleaning that area. I don't know if I've talked to many people who love flossing, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard a patient come in, we do all that work, and they go, man, I'm going to floss every day so I don't have to do that again. Mm. And sometimes I think it takes that little bit of failure or that little bit of hurt or that little bit of damage to be like, I have to make a change.
Yeah.
And this is important. Yeah. And I think what would be great is if we could convince everybody to make that change without having that damage. Learning from others, not learning through their own experiences.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking is that the Bible talks about in Hebrews it says, and let us consider how to stir one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, all the more as you see the day drawing near. And I think that verse speaks to two different groups of people. It talks about the person who's neglecting to meet, that person needs to come in, but the others also need to be there to encourage and to pour into the lives of those people who are making the effort to come.
Right.
And that's an everybody thing.
Right.
Some people might pour into your life, but your job isn't to seek them pouring into your life. Your job is to seek, encouraging others. And I think that when you encourage one another like that, to stir one another up towards love and good deeds, how do we know what that stuff is? We have to know their scripture. We have to know the Bible. Yeah. And I think that starting at that point is probably the easier spot. The harder spot is getting into those habits. You talked in the last podcast about, your beliefs need to be fed. If you're not feeding them, they're not your beliefs, or they're going to die. Yep. Yep. And I think that's a good spot to start too. But that's the same kind of thing as flossing, just to bring that full circle. Where you got to start somewhere. You got to start with a little bit, even if it's something. Tell patients, I was a terrible flosser, and I just picked two things. So I don't miss a day flossing, or so I don't miss a week flossing. I floss before I go to church, and I help out on Wednesday night, I help out on Sundays. I make sure I floss twice a week. That twice a week, it's going to be better than every day for 3 weeks, and then I never floss again, Yeah. So consistency, even if it's not as much as what you think it should be. Like you said in the last podcast, do something.
Do something.
Yeah.
Even if you're behind.
And quit saying that you're behind. Just do something, Right. We have today. And that verse specifically, you'll notice when you read it in your Bibles, the word day is capitalized, right? So we are doing these things until the day. Wow. And by day, the author of Hebrews means when Jesus gets back. Yeah. So we live with a sense of urgency that we're doing this, and it's meaningful and it's worth our time because we don't know how much time we have. And the church has been saying that for 2,000 years, but we shouldn't assume that Jesus won't come back in our lifetime, right? So we need to have that sense of keeping on our eye that he will come back, and that forms our priorities, right?
Yeah, just thinking about these, another question that popped in my head as you were talking, little on topic, a little bit off topic, but just thinking about these parents. I've had parents come up to me after I've preached and I've talked about, hey, you're the main disciple maker in your home. And they're like, I didn't know I was the main disciple maker in my home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How do we get them to know that? Is that kind of go back to what you were saying? Hey, I'm encouraging you to be the main disciple maker in your home, or?
Yeah, I think so. Just that conversation they had, that's exactly what we need to be doing and helping people understand.
Can you put the mic a little closer to your mouth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we need to be doing.
Well, it's raising awareness. Something that I was thinking of too when both of you guys were talking, it's like, how do we do this? The word I keep going back to, and it's something that I've been talking a lot about with Teresa Deckard, our discipleship director here. This idea of living intergenerationally as a church instead of multi-generationally, right? So multi-generational, you can picture it, everybody's in their own box. Intergenerational is we're all kind of living life together. And a great example of that is Teresa was telling me about a conversation she had with somebody, and they were saying to her, well, do you have any small groups for people who are in my stage of life? And Teresa's kind of like, well, no, we have these few, opportunities to jump into a new group. And the conversation basically got down to, well, but I mean, can you really relate to people who were like, younger than you or whatever? I think this is an older person. And Teresa immediately was like, well, let me tell you about this group where there's like this young engaged couple and this senior adult couple and a single man. And like, it was just a hodgepodge of people this last spring that got together, like 8 people, 10 people. And they had a great time. Like, this couple that is engaged, they invited everybody from that small group to their wedding.
Wow.
Because they got so close so quickly. And to me, that's just a beautiful picture of, okay, we have to, I think there's a place for having specific groups for specific stages of life and maybe needs, right? That's important. But we can't do that to the neglect of the generations speaking into each other. And so I say all of that because your comment, well, I didn't know I was the primary disciple maker. Well, we need older disciples of Christ speaking into the lives of younger parents and say, hey, I want to help you, or did you know that, right? And for there to be a sense that we're growing together. And if you read the pastoral epistles, it's okay, older gals, teach the young women to love their husbands and love their kids. Like, that's what it says. It doesn't say, okay, now here's the curriculum to go through. No, teach the young women, right? And so I don't know why that struck me so much. And you could say, older guys teach the young men to XYZ. It's so simple. Love your family. That's what Paul is saying the older generation should teach. Yeah. And that's the church coming together to support the family, to educate. And in this case, educate has to do with our affections. It's, I'm prioritizing my family, and us as guys, we get sucked into our work, and we need to be called out every so often. Like, okay, we're out of bounds again. Sorry. But we also need help from others who are in the older generation who can say, yeah, I've been there, and here's what I did.
Well, I think that goes back to maybe this was your last podcast that you had, but you talked about kind of the church made everything too easy, basically.
Yeah.
Is what you were saying.
Yep.
We think that we should just outsource all of these things, whereas there's no outsourcing someone older speaking into your life and growing you from that. I always think of a great theologian, Kobe Bryant, who said this. He won Game 6 in the NBA Finals, and some reporter asked him, how does it feel to win Game 6? And they were up, I think 3-3 is what they were tied now, and tie up the series. You needed to win one more to win. And he just looks at him and says, job's not finished. Job's not finished. And I relate that to multi-generational type stuff and intergenerational stuff, because the older people can sometimes feel like, I've been put on a shelf. I feel like I'm done.
Yeah.
But the job's not finished until you're called home, right? So you can't outsource that. You got to go and do it. And I think that speaks to a lot of what the church can be doing.
Did you have a thought? Or I was just going to add to that. Parents my age, and especially younger, are hungry for mentorship, but they don't know how to get it. And then people who are in the older generation, maybe they're retired, they assume that they have no more use.
Right.
And I'm just like pulling my hair out. Like, can I get you guys in the same room and let you just say these false things that no one wants to mentor me. Okay. Come to church. Let's get plugged into an intergenerational small group. Ask somebody to get lunch. Like, it's simple stuff. Right. And the idea of the church being a hub for education, you think about it in terms of classroom and relationship, because the church is both organization and organism. Yeah. So it's not going to be like only rows and only classes. It's going to be, we're just doing life together, and we're speaking into each other, and we're answering each other's questions, and we're like going through the roller coaster of life together, right? That's also formation. It's not just information. So, but when you get the generations to come together, I think that's part of that piece of how do you, and it's like all these different threads that we've been talking about. How do you form worldview?
Right.
How do you bring the church and the family together? how do you help young people to be like solidified in their beliefs by 9? It's like all of these ingredients that have to be in there. And when you don't have certain things, you can feel that something's missing, but you might not be able to identify what it is. It's like, there's just something not there.
I think that's where, Zach, you had that person come up to you and say, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was supposed to do that. I didn't know that was my role. That took them being humble. That took them being vulnerable and seeking something out. You said the church has made a lot of things too easy where it just becomes content to be consumed. I think at some point the responsibility is on the parent or on the person or on the individual, whoever that is, to humble themselves, to be vulnerable and say, I need help here. And that's a hard thing to convince people to do. And it's not something you can make them do. And that's really where being in constant prayer, seeing when you know somebody needs help, but they're not willing to be humble enough or vulnerable enough to ask for help. Sometimes reaching out and trying to force them to do it isn't the right answer. The right answer is just stop and pray. Yeah. Pray for a soft heart. Man, there's times where I realize that I'm feeling like, no, I can do this. And I need a softer heart sometimes. And I know that I'm not the only one.
Oh, you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to that point too, you talk about it kind of being on the individual, but kind of the flip side of the soften of the heart type issue. Me and Richard were talking about just a little bit earlier again before we started the podcast, how God just lays people on your heart sometimes too. Like, here's that person. I started thinking about them, reach out to them right there. And maybe that's you calling them to take that step, or, hey, how can I pray for you? And that gives them the courage to finally step out of that. So I think it's both sides of that too. We need to pray and be in prayer, and also don't be afraid to reach out and step out and call that person out.
Well, and call them up.
Yep.
Maybe you're at a higher rung and you're reaching down saying, hey, there's more life. There's more joy. There's more fruit from the Spirit. And we can go further up and further in. And there's more to following Christ than getting to a ladder rung and then staying, right? There's more. And to not allow ourselves to be complacent. And it takes the church to keep calling each other up. Yeah. That passage you mentioned in Hebrews, we are to stir one another up to love and good works. There's this process of like, I just imagine this big bowl with lots of, spoons.
People.
We're stirring each other, and that takes a lot of work, and you kind of sense this like movement of the Spirit, and that takes another person who's in my local church to point at me and be like, hey, I see something in you, or let's, even just as simple like Zach said, a text,
right?
And that can come from just your fellow church people. Are you connected enough for them to even know that you go to the church so that they know that they can text you, like going back to your personal responsibility comment, like you got to get plugged in.
Right.
Yeah. All right. We're at almost 45 minutes, and so we have to... Felt so good, I got to hit it twice. Okay, so going back to the question, it was, which Awana began in the children's ministry of what Chicago church? It was A, Moody Church, B, Chicago Gospel Tabernacle, C, Willow Creek, and D, Pacific Garden Mission. And the answer is... So, Eric, you said C, Willow Creek.
I'm pretty confident in my guess. I guessed really hard.
You guessed really hard.
Yeah, like I applied my guessing skills to their max.
I love it. But you guys disagreed because Zach said B, Chicago Gospel Tabernacle. So, either you're both wrong or one of you is right. So, the answer is...
That's how the math works.
Yeah, right.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I said that because for like dramatic effect, it wasn't obvious.
Well, I just had to make fun of you a little bit.
I deserve it. Okay. The answer is B.
Oh,
Nice work, Zach.
I've been studying a lot of Awana stuff here lately, so I think that probably helped me a little bit.
It like was just buried in the back of your brain.
Right. I thought it was that or D. I knew it was like a longer name. Yeah.
I think if I hadn't looked it up, I would have assumed Willow Creek too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that reinforcement of my guessing. Yeah.
I just that's what I would have thought. Like that is what it is, you know?
Awesome.
So if you got that answer right, then you also have 1,000,000 points along with Pastor Zach.
No, it was only 1,000.
Oh, that's right. I did bring it back down. You're right. You're right. Well, this has been the Richard Eng Podcast. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
This is a good time. Yeah. If you are new to the podcast, or if you want to get more resources, you can go to my website, join my email list, and I send out new episodes, blogs, things that's going on, things that you can look forward to. And so get signed up there, and then you'll never miss anything. Also, if this was helpful, leave a review, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment, right? I'm actually, I mentioned I'm going to be doing an AI series here coming up, and I've actually got a couple interviews, one with an author of a book who just came out on the church and ministry in AI, and then another guy who created, dude, it's crazy. It's like an evangelism tool that utilizes AI. I've shown you it.
Yeah, that thing's awesome.
It's cool. So I've got those two, but I'm gonna kick us off next time with kind of a philosophy theology of AI and Christianity. So all that to say, don't miss any of that stuff. Stick around. You guys have anything else to say?
For all your dental needs, see Dr. Eric.
Oh, no. You stop that. That's not what this is for.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.